All right, so news is made it out about the Steam machine that's going to be available next year in 2026. And while a lot of specifications for the machine were released, a lot of channels did reviews of the specifications for that, and we have all those details. Some information has kind of been left out, and the takes that some people have had are kind of interesting because I've seen a lot of channels. I watched a lot of videos because I was interested to see what this was all about. And a lot are either kind of on the side of advertising for it or seems like they're paid to amp it up, whatever it is. And bigger channels are going to have their own slant, but I'm coming at this partly an opinion for why I would or would not buy this, and to provide you some more information, because I do think there's a market for it, and a lot of the channels have not really expressed what that market is. And I think I know who the market is, and I think I understand the marketing plan for the Steam machine and what they're looking at doing. But quickly, if you don't know, you can go check out a ton of other videos by other creators about what the Steam machine is. But just in a nutshell, it's a PC-like box that will fit near your TV so you can play games through Steam, and hopefully get you away from console and into PC gaming, I think is the goal for that. It does appear to look like a lower end machine. I'm thinking like a gaming laptop. Light is the best way I can put that, but will allow you to play a wide selection of games. So it is intended, again, to be plugged into your television and in your living room to be a replacement for a console. So from there, let's get into who is the target audience for this thing. Well, I'm thinking it's going to be users who have not been introduced to the PC gaming market, who are not currently on Steam playing Steam games, who either have a handheld or don't. Maybe they're wanting to get something to plug into their TV. I think it's going to be marketed like an entry-level machine, an entry-level gaming rig to get you into things. I think also to a negative that this is heavily going to be marketed to those who do not know anything about PC gaming, that are easily going to be fooled by the price in comparison to what a PC costs, which is very misleading because PC gaming does not have to be exceptionally expensive, and there's a value per price kind of deal with that. I'm currently running behind on, but working on getting a video series about building your own gaming machine. So that might help. I need to get onto those videos. I've just had a lot going on, but and then the other target is users who maybe they have a gaming machine that's aging, like Windows 10, and they don't want to spend the money to upgrade a new machine. This might be a little bit cheaper of an option for them to get into at whatever price point it's going to be, and we'll see. The price isn't out there yet, and I will have speculation at the end of this video on pricing and why I think that. And I think that it's one of those things that will have a very specific market that may or may not grow. We'll see on that. So let's see what we've got here for, why you should not buy this machine. And again, this is going to be my opinion blended in with some of the information that's available. So I don't think the price will be worth it. The key on that is I do not think the price for this machine will be worth it at whatever price they put it at. Because they've already said it's going to be priced like a PC, and that tells me it's going to be something that is not a good value. It may be cheaper than a do-it-yourself rig, maybe, or a pre-build, but I don't think it's worth the money in that case. And again, I'll explain more of that later on. Most likely, I think this device is only going to last 5 or 6 years for the most part. Granted, you could probably leave this thing running and play older games, but for people that have to have the latest games, this is going to be a 5 or 6 year machine, because I'm pretty sure by year 5 or 6, the hardware will be so bad, it's not going to be able to run a lot of modern games at that point. The hardware in this is not that impressive. You shouldn't buy it because of that. The hardware is not that impressive. It's not horrible, but it's not great. And you could do on, even $1,000, you could probably build something that's going to last a bit longer than this, or at least perform a bit better. The CPU and GPU are not upgradable. For me, that's a huge deal breaker. That's why this is only a 5 or 6 year machine. When I've talked about in other videos I've done earlier than this, building gaming rigs, I want a 10 or 15 year machine. And that's not just like a hypothetical. I was running a Dell XPS 8300 as my gaming rig. That machine lasted 12 years. It still functions. It just would not run 2 or 3 games that were very modern right now, and I decided it was time to upgrade. That machine would still work. I could still play 99% of my Steam library without an issue. So it was still a good machine, but there was also the fact it wouldn't run Windows 11 in a way that I was comfortable with. It didn't have TPM, so I decided it was just time to upgrade. Enough about that, though. So yeah, CPU, GPU, you can't upgrade those. So you're stuck. Once those become out of date, they're out of date. And I don't care what software they've written to make SteamOS run better, you're stuck with that. Some popular games are just not going to work because of the anti-cheat. There's no way around that. So if you like Battlefield and stuff, that's one title in particular, it's not going to work because of the anti-cheat. You can Google a quick list of games that will not work. I'm not going to go through those here, but you should look into that before you get it. Especially if you're looking at buying this, understand that there are some AAA titles you are not going to be able to play because it is on SteamOS, which is essentially Linux. Another reason for not getting this is if you like to have all your games installed. I like to have as many of my games installed as possible. I have an 8 terabyte mechanical hard drive for older games and for games that don't need an NVMe. For those, I have a 1 terabyte NVMe that I run for newer games, but the storage is going to be limited on this thing. And the whole process of uninstalling a game to install a new game has become very annoying to me. That's why I don't like the experience on Xbox anymore. And I had a very large hard drive plugged into my Xbox One. But I like as many games installed as possible. And you're going to find that with a lot of the newer games, 1 to 2 terabytes of storage is not that much space when you start installing some of these giant AAA titles. So for me, it's a no on the storage portion. 4K 60 FPS, in a bit of opinion here, I don't care about 4K. I don't think a lot of people are utilizing 4K resolution and the experience the way they think they are. I think 1080, 60 FPS for solo play games is absolutely fine. I think for multiplayer, you probably do want, something a little bit higher in the FPS refresh rate. I try to do 144. I play at 1080, 144 for most multiplayer games that I do, and that's just fine. But I'm also sitting I think 3.5 feet away from my monitor, something like that. So for me, it's fine. For 4K, the distances you need and stuff to enjoy that, there's charting out there that shows you kind of where that's optimal. I just don't think a lot of people are going to use that. Even sitting on a couch away from their television, I think 1080 is fine as long as you have the right size 1080 TV. And to that point, how many people are doing true 4K on console? I don't know those numbers. I know people are doing it, but I'm saying are actively using it, not running, 1080 because of their television limitations. So anyway, that's for you to decide. If it was me, I would stick to 1080 60 FPS for solo play games and see if you can get it to 144. I haven't seen any information about what this thing can hit on FPS on 1080. They're just touting the 4K. Everybody seems to just like 4K, or if you're not playing 4K, you're not playing games. And I think that's ridiculous. I've talked about in other videos how I think that running 4K is a waste of money and it just makes your build more expensive. At max, I would run 1440 and would go no far beyond that. So anyway, enough of that. Why should you buy this? I had a hard time getting some good points together on why you should buy it, but it is a good start to baseline PC gaming. If you want to dip your feet into that water, this is a great place to start because it gets you into that market and really gives you an idea of what it's like to run on low-end hardware so you can understand kind of where you're at. And I want to touch back, because I forgot to mention this, about the 4K portion. You're only hitting that 4K 60 FPS if you crank your settings down. Multiple channels that got to review this box had to crank stuff down to medium. So for me, that's a disappointing fact. If you're saying you can play in 4K, but all of your visuals have to be medium, you're not playing in true 4K then. Stick to 1080. Anyway, back onto the why you should buy. It may be a cheaper option if you can't wait to save up money or unable to save up more money, and their price point is all you can afford. It may be the better option, but I'm still pretty sure on this that whatever price point they're going to put out, because they're going to have markup, right? So they can make money off the hardware. They want to make money off the hardware. You're going to be able to build something better, much better than what they can put out. We'll see what the price is. Again, towards the end of this, I'll have speculation on pricing. Then there was the question of, if people do buy this, what's going to stop them? I saw this come out a few places. What's going to stop people from just saying, I am done with this, I'm returning it, I'm going back? Or maybe just after a while, they're like, this isn't as great as I thought it was. It's been a year. I don't want this anymore. Well, people end up getting this are going to get hooked on the Steam sales. If you PC game and you're watching this going, no, that's not the case, they will. People get hooked on the Steam sales. They will build a library. And once they have started buying into that library and have spent a few $100s and have a large amount of games, because that will happen between bundle sites like Humble, is there any deal, stuff like that, where it shows you where sales are at, they're going to bulk up a library very quickly. And that sunk cost fallacy into the games, not the hardware, but the games, is going to hook people. There's also the selling point that with Steam, once you've bought the games, any machine that you build and you have Steam on, you can play your games on there. Your saves transfer, in most cases, your saves transfer, because your saves are in the cloud. You get a local copy and cloud copy of saves, but you can just play your games on another system. So if you were playing a game at medium on this box and you've already bought that game, then when you build a bigger machine, a beefier machine, you can now go play that same game at full everything, settings maxed out. So I think that's going to be something that's going to keep people in. They're going to go into PC gaming having all that. And you get access to indie games that are currently not on consoles. I have friends who don't play a lot of the games that me and some of my other friends play because of the fact that there are indie games that are just not going to console because of the cost to get those games on those platforms. And a lot of that feels like you're getting a preview or a first release kind of speciality, an exclusive, because of the fact that, you know, it's not going. Repo is a great game that is, you know, there, as far as I know, it's still console bound. Or not console bound, it's still Steam bound, PC bound, because it's not going to be on consoles, because the developers are, you know, getting it out easier on Steam, because the barrier of entry to get it onto Steam's marketplace is a lot easier. Not to mention there are tons and tons of even more niche indie games on places like itch.io that you can get that aren't even on Steam that you can play through a PC. So, and I'm pretty sure a lot of those will run through Steam with some finagling. That's more complicated. Most people are going to get into, but anyhow, and then this is going to be sold as a console killer. And I think that once people have this setting next to their TV plugged in and they're gaming and they experience it, even with reduced settings at 4K, or maybe they're blindly walking into it and auto setting up at 1080, you'd be surprised how many people do not know what resolution they're actually playing at. They have no idea. They plug in their console, their TV says 4K, they assume they're playing at 4K, and that is not the case. You can go through Reddit post after Reddit post of people going, I have a 4K TV, but my console's not playing at 4K. What's the deal? And that gets in the back and forth. Are we using the right HDMI cable? Is your console set up correct? Is your TV actually 4K? All of that. So there is a large portion of gamers who are not tech savvy, who do not understand that they're playing at 1080 and not 4K. That is a thing. There's also a lot of people who play at 60 FPS who do not realize they're playing at 60 FPS. That is a thing as well. So let's get into kind of the questions in everybody's mind. What is this going to be priced at? Everybody's wondering about this. My speculation is first, let's talk about what it should be priced at. It won't be priced at this, but what it should be priced at. I think to get the large swath of people currently running consoles, this should be priced at $500 or $800. Now, I know already that's not going to be the case, but that's where it should be priced. But Steam did say this is going to be in line with PC pricing. I did do a mock-up build using micro ATX specifications for the case, which is about as small as you can get on a desktop build. I used the Ryzen 5 5600 GT as the processor, and the rest of the specs that I come up with that matched what the Steam machine had, and that came in about $1,000. And that's me buying the parts myself, not paying someone to build it, those kind of things. That also does not include like shipping costs, but that I just wanted a rounder number, and that the shipping costs and stuff would not matter because of where I'm going to round this at. So where do I think the cost of this is going to be? I think it's going to put this machine between $1,200 and $1,500. I think that's the price point they're going to get. If I had to name a rounder number, I'd say $1,450 is what they're going to put this at. I think that's going to be the cost on this. And if you're looking at me like it's not too bad because gaming is like $2,000-$3,000, I would urge you to look at still building, because if you spent, you know, $1,500 on a ATX case with better hardware for AM5, you would do a lot better because the upgrade path, right? This system that I built on 1,000, the DIY build, would have been with AM4 socket compatibility, meaning you're not getting, when it's done, it's done. You're not getting much else on that. Sure, there's a little bit of upgrading you could do on your own build in that, but why would you upgrade outdated parts on an outdated platform or socket type when you could just start with AM5 on about 1,500, plus or minus a couple $100 depending on the processor you're going with and the experience you want. Again, if you're going to aim at the 1080p 60 FPS mark, and only plan to go to 144 for multiplayer on FPS, 144 FPS on the multiplayer, you could probably spend $1,000 to $1,200, but you're going to have to do some upgrading if you want to do more than that later on. But it gives you that time, right? And at that's still a 10 or 15 year machine, because you're upgrading, say, the CPU in a couple of years, maybe the cooling if you need to. You have a path of upgrade that's going to get you to 15 years on that machine about. So I would not personally waste my money on a set-top box that's a glorified laptop that I can't upgrade the parts on. Yeah, you can upgrade the storage in it and the RAM on the Steam machine, but I don't think upgrading the 16 gigs of RAM is going to matter that much, considering where the processor's at. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. I think that if the memory was a sticking point, they would have just sold it with a 32 gig option instead of 16. They're not, so obviously they're not looking at that as a big point. I think it's a talking point or a bullet point to try to get you to buy, like, look, you can upgrade it. Same with the storage. You're probably only going to be able to get that thing to like a 2 terabyte storage space. So I don't see that as a good part to it. It's just not appealing to me. That's not a path to upgrade for me. RAM and physical storage are very minor issues in my opinion for something like this. If they had a way for you to upgrade the CPU and GPU, that would be a lot bigger of a deal, and it's just not. So for me, that's a no on it. Building a gaming rig at the same price, why you can't, you shouldn't. I think I kind of already covered that, but it's one of those things where it's just, you can build so much better on about the same price or a little bit more. And my thought process is, let's say you already have that $1,000. Maybe this is around tax season. You've got your tax return and you're like, I got this money that I'm putting with this other money I've saved or whatever, or maybe you're saving up to it. Just save to the 1,500 and get you a gaming rig. Do that. I will try to get the other videos out as soon as I can for what I'm talking about for so you want to build your own gaming PC. My build cost me just under $2,000. I'm exceptionally happy with it. I haven't released the specs on that yet, but I'm talking about component by component on this channel about what that looks like, what you should be aiming to do, and what you should be looking to build. Kind of setting realistic expectations, in my opinion, because I think a $3,000-$4,000 gaming rig is ridiculous. I think even $2,500 on a gaming rig new is ridiculous. I think you should be aiming for closer to $2,000, and that be your cap. Lastly on this, I want to talk about why I think Valve may have hit a sweet spot on the timing for this. So it's going to be going out in 2026. I'm not sure yet. I didn't see what part of 2026. I think it was like first quarter, but I could be wrong. But I think they've timed this about right because of the fact that we have PC parts going up. GPU and RAM in particular are at insane prices right now. Now, when I did my comparative build, when I was going through that, I used historical pricing before prices spiked to look at what it would have been normally, kind of in normal market conditions before prices went up, to get an idea of like what it would be. So that's where that pricing came from. And if a build is just too expensive and you just absolutely have to get into a gaming rig right now, this may be the best deal for you for, right now and to last you 5 or 6 years into. Just set your expectations. I think that that's going to be the case for a lot of people. I think because of nothing else, the Steam machine will sell well because it's at a spot where people just can't afford anything more than whatever the price point is going to be on a Steam box. In my opinion, this could be different based on the price. If the Steam box drops, or Steam machine, keep calling it Steam box. If the Steam machine drops at a $1,500 price point, I think you're still better off trying to build a entry-level gaming rig that you can upgrade when prices fall, because it is going to be cheaper to get a 16 gig RAM kit than a 32 gig RAM kit, and you can make 16 gigs work for a lot of gaming without a problem. You can even get lesser processors and slightly lesser GPUs. I know everybody is at the roof with 12 gig, 16 gig GPUs at this point, but you can play even modern games on an 8 gig GPU with some settings changes. It'd be the same as getting a Steam box in a lot of cases. At least you're playing the games, and then you have the satisfaction on when GPU prices do drop, you're able to get a GPU a bit cheaper to get upgraded. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. To address one other thing, I saw a lot of people asking, not me, but other videos and comments, how it was that they were going to get processors cheap enough to throw into this thing. And one, you have to understand, this is custom hardware put together for the Steam machine, and they're using, from what I understand, binned AMD chips. Those are chips that do not quite make the cut for mainline assembly out. That's a rough definition of that. But those chips can be repurposed to people that are looking to buy them in bulk and put them in custom builds. And that's kind of what's happened here. So we know that the CPU and everything is soldered to a board, meaning it's non-replaceable. That's the similar thing to what consoles do. That's why you can't upgrade the hardware in there. So that's kind of where they're able to make it cheaper. You know, if I had access to buy binned parts as custom parts for a desktop build, I could probably get the price on my desktop down. To speculate on that, the processor that I had spec'd this out for, I think was 150 on that Ryzen 5 5600 GT on the mock-up I did. I think that with what they're doing, with what Valve is doing with this, I think they're probably getting those CPUs closer to 50, 60 bucks. But again, they're going to want to make money off of this. They're not content with losing money on hardware like Microsoft is with the Xbox. They want to make money off this hardware as well. I don't think it's going to be a large margin. I think $100 to $200 of the sale price of the Steam machine is going to be profit for Valve. So anyway, before this gets exceptionally longer, I'm going to close out with, let me know what you think. You know, do you think I'm wrong anything in particular? If so, what? Let me know in the comments below. If you think I'm correct on it, let me know. I'd be interested to see what you think, whether you would buy this or not. Have you PC gamed before? Would this be your first foray in? Is this what you've been looking forward to? Is there anything I may have missed that you think is important? Leave it in the comments below, and I appreciate you guys for watching this.